Overnight, fierce winds and blizzards swept through. An Arctic cold wave struck, but I was drinking red wine in a cave, soaking in a natural hot spring, watching my ex-boyfriend who betrayed me in a past life, struggling in the apocalypse. In my previous life, the return train I took was blocked in the mountains due to the snowstorm. As the outside temperature plummeted to -70 degrees Celsius, the power system failed. With a shortage of supplies, people on the train turned violent. They fought each other madly. In the end, even I was pushed off by my boyfriend, just to get a tattered cotton coat to keep warm. I closed my eyes in the cold and fear. When I opened them again, I was back at my boyfriend Jiang Xincheng's hometown. It's already late. Hurry and get up. My mom asked you to help make dumplings. I didn't move, looking around in disbelief. My mind was in chaos. Jiang Xincheng and I had been dating for 3 years. This was the first spring festival. He brought me home to meet his parents. We met at work. When we first met, he was honest and considerate, very caring. Since my parents passed away, I hadn't felt the warmth of a family for a long time. So, when Jiang Xincheng proposed to me with a 100,000 yuan diamond ring, I said yes without hesitation. But when I followed him back to his hometown, I realized his home was in such a remote mountain family in such a desolate place. And surprisingly, there were 2 older sisters and a younger brother. The whole family survived on just a tiny patch of farmland. Jiang Xincheng told me he was the only college graduate in the village. Now that he could bring me home. His parents were thrilled. Back then, I was fooled by his sweet words. Now thinking back, it's all so ironic. Now thinking back, it's incredibly ironic. After my parents passed away, they left me 2 properties and millions in inheritance. How could his parents not be thrilled when they found out? Ever since I came to their home, I didn't feel the warmth of a family. All I got were harsh treatments. They subtly mocked me for being older, orphaned without parents, and still unmarried at 27. They said I was jinxed if Jiang Xincheng didn't like me. In this village, even with a dowry of hundreds of thousands, no one would want me. Seeing that I still didn't move, Jiang Xincheng seemed to realize something. After all, we weren't married yet. If I got offended now, all his plans would fall apart. Everything he was scheming for would be ruined. He immediately came over and said, "Peepee, this is your first time visiting. My parents don't know what kind of dumpling filling you like. They're worried you might not enjoy it. That's why they asked you to help make dumplings. Just to chat with you and learn your preferences. They're not really making you work." Jiang Xincheng always had a sweet tongue. I nodded and got up to go wash. Carrying the basin, I turned the corner and overheard a conversation between his parents. "What are you worried about? Once Xincheng marries her, that inheritance will belong to our Jiang family." Would she agree to that? Why wouldn't she? Xincheng proposed to her with a diamond ring worth 100,000 yuan just to win her over. That brat doesn't even care about saving money anymore. He won't even support his own younger brother. But he bought that girl a cheap ring instead. Even the rent for it is 200 yuan a day. Otherwise, do you think that girl would be willing to come home for the new year? Later, we'll just say he lost it himself, and he'll even feel like he owes us a favor. When the time comes, whatever we want, how could he not agree? Hearing their plan to gain everything without giving anything, the true faces of the Jiang family, it was exactly the same as in my past life. In that life, when I heard this, in my past life, I definitely would have had a huge argument with Jiang Xincheng. But this time, I held back. After all, compared to what's about to happen in the future, this is nothing. There are still 3 months until the cold wave arrives. The moment I realized everything was real, I had no time for sorrow. At noon, while Jiang Xincheng was napping, I immediately took the diamond ring back to the luxury store, returned it for 80% of its price. Once I had the cash, I turned around and took the property deed the Jiang family had long coveted and used it for a mortgage loan. I also unfroze all the inheritance my parents left behind. This time, I wouldn't just survive. I wanted Jiang Xincheng dead. In my past life, the cold wave hit suddenly. But what if that train hadn't coincidentally been crossing the mountains? it likely still would have been completely buried by snow, and the passengers wouldn't have had any chance of survival. But why, when the outside temperature had already dropped to minus 70 degrees Celsius, did the temperature outside that train drop a whole day later? I realized that mountain region might have some special terrain features, so I immediately checked the maps and researched geological studies of that area. After several sleepless nights of reviewing the data, I finally found the answer. Though the place seemed to be surrounded by lush green mountains, beneath the mountains lay an area of intense geothermal activity. Places like that are usually volcanic belts or tectonic plate boundaries. Once I discovered this, one immediately headed to the mountain area where the train had stopped in my past life. During this time, I used a business trip as an excuse, hearing that I might get promoted and a raise upon return. Jiang Xinsheng had no objections at all. I arrived at a county town, closest to the mountainous region. There were quite a few tourist attractions here. I posed as a tourism developer and negotiated with local travel agencies. After a week of surveying and scouting, I finally discovered an abandoned resort in a place rarely visited by anyone. According to the local travel agency, the resort was actually a private estate built secretly by the former county mayor, under the guise of a public construction project. But barely half a year into the build, the mayor was investigated and arrested for corruption. The construction site halfway up the mountain became a permanently unfinished project. It has now been abandoned for nearly 2 years. That place is about 7 or 8 kilometers of mountain road from the county. Other than the mayor, no one else would ever bother going there. It was never meant for public use, only for his private indulgence. They even warned me not to mess with that place. Rumor has it the area is creepy. People often go missing. Maybe the mayor disturbed something unnatural, and that's why it all fell apart. But compared to natural disasters, ghosts are the least of my worries. The more they tried to scare me off, the more determined I became. I immediately rented a car and drove straight to the abandoned construction site. Navigating through the winding mountain roads, I reached halfway up the mountain. At last, I saw the abandoned ruins of the project. Without hesitation, I walked into the cave. At the end of the path was an unlocked door. I pushed it open with all my strength. What lay ahead was an empty, hollow space. Beyond that open area, there was another room. I turned on my flashlight and entered. To my surprise, there was an elevator inside. Compared to the empty space I had just seen outside, this area looked more like a proper and well-defined foyer. I raised my flashlight and looked around, then stepped into another room. I discovered this was the power control center of the entire cave. I reached out and hesitantly pulled the breaker down. The next second, I heard the hum of electric motors starting up. Moments later, the whole cave lit up brilliantly. Stunned, I looked around in disbelief. Above, I found another breaker switch, labeled solar power and backup generator system. At that moment, an overwhelming sense of excitement surged through me. My heart started pounding wildly. I really didn't expect that this place would be equipped with solar panels and backup generators. Just imagine months from now when the deep freeze hits. Every road below will be buried in snow. Wouldn't this place become the perfect, low-temperature, isolated, safe and ideal survival base? I suppressed the excitement in my heart. I took the elevator downward and walked into a spacious hall. There were no visible light fixtures. All the lighting strips were embedded into the stone walls. Below the stone walls were dried-up pools. Above the pools was a filtration system. It looked like it was meant for fish farming. And on the platform above the pool was soil-filled terrain, likely prepared by the county mayor for planting vegetation. I explored a few more rooms, including a bedroom, a karaoke room, a library, and even a starlight cinema. As I walked deeper inside, I saw several large and small hot spring pools. Warm steam was rising gently upward, floating along barely perceptible air currents. It looked like the rocky ceiling above had hidden air vents connected to the outside. I bent down and touched the stone floor, warm to the touch. Slightly hot even. Probably around 40 degrees Celsius, from the looks of it. This was definitely the geothermal zone mentioned in the documents. It's essentially natural heating. With this in place, even the coldest days outside wouldn't be a threat. I completed a full tour of the cave complex. The place was fully equipped with furniture and appliances. Who would have thought such a massive project, built halfway through, would be left to rot and end up benefiting me? I must say, this cave is the perfect base. It barely needs any further development. This was a huge win. I immediately retraced my steps, shut off the main power, and locked the steel gate. After finishing everything, I drove back to town. I immediately rented a courtyard house, bought 5 freezers, and a large freight truck. Then I began a 2-month preparation phase. First priority, living safety. While the rock layers provided excellent insulation, some areas had windows installed, which significantly weakened the insulation. At -70 degrees Celsius, ordinary windows would never hold up. They had to be replaced with more durable, low-temperature resistant organic glass. Expecting rescue from the outside was impossible. I had to be prepared for a long-term survival scenario, so a reliable water source became even more important. Solar heating panels can only withstand temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius to keep them operating long-term. They must be attached directly to geothermal rock. But rather than gamble on that, it seemed more practical to prepare multiple diesel generators. That said, I still ordered extra solar panels. If the day ever came when diesel ran out, I could then consider using open areas for solar energy collection. Having a backup plan is always the safest route. As for water, I directly purchased pre-filtration units and water purifiers. All of these required large quantities of filter supplies, enough to last at least 10 years. Once the infrastructure was in place, I began the most straightforward task: stockpiling supplies. The empty land behind the hot springs had direct sunlight above and naturally heated rock below. If I transplanted enough fertile soil, growing vegetables wouldn't be an issue. At the same time, I could also raise some chickens. Feed them a bit of grain daily and they'd thrive. Thinking of all this, I immediately contacted a food factory and ordered tons of rice, flour, grain, and every day I received goods during the day and transported them to the mountains at night. As for dried vegetables and military-grade canned food, they were my emergency rations and also the longest-lasting supplies. Aside from the basic foods, cookies and candy, vegetarian food and drinks, I also placed several bulk orders. Soon, the supplies had nearly filled up the entire underground hall. People in town started getting suspicious about my delivery truck. They saw trucks hauling goods there every day, delivering to the courtyard. Soon someone came to ask what kind of business I was running. I didn't hide anything. I showed them the freezers in my courtyard, along with the snacks and beverages. I said I was supplying food to nearby scenic spots, and that I was busy sourcing goods every day. Eventually, no one bothered me anymore. After about a month, every possible space in the cave was nearly filled. 2 months passed just like that, and Jiang Xincheng finally grew suspicious. I knew I couldn't keep lying any longer, so I took the train back to the city myself. Over the past 2 months, I had visibly lost quite a bit of weight. That alone silenced Jiang Xincheng, who had been suspicious. He had nothing to say anymore. Truthfully, if I hadn't returned to Jiang Xincheng's hometown, I could have entered the mountain cave earlier and safely started my doomsday life ahead of time. But it didn't matter. Thinking of what he did to me in my past life, leaving me to die in fear and cold, I can't forget that feeling to this day. Even if I have to take a risk this time, I will make sure he suffers. I smiled as I talked with Jiang Xincheng about our plans to go home for Spring Festival, but the closer we got to the day of the cold wave's arrival, the more frequent the dreams from my past life became. After washing up, I went to tidy my things and bumped into Jiang Xincheng's parents. "Girl," they said, "we country folks don't know the rules of the city. Since Xincheng already gave you a 100,000 yuan ring, do we still need to prepare anything else?" I heard there's no such thing as a bride price in the city. I nodded slightly. That's true, but a car and a house are still necessary. After all, this is marriage. No one wants to marry into a dead-end life. Wouldn't you agree? I said it all with a smile. The 2 elders were stunned on the spot. They were just about to argue back, but I immediately softened my tone. Still, it hasn't been easy raising Xincheng, has it? Housing in the city is so expensive. How could you afford it? If you ask me, buying a car for Xincheng would be enough. When we have kids in the future, it'll be easier for him to take you to see the doctor or run errands. Hearing this, Zhang's mother immediately looked displeased again. He even said 500 to 600 yuan was too expensive. Zhang Fu had seen more of the world. And he knew clearly that a 50 to 60k car was nothing in the city. He quickly smoothed things over. Of course, that's something we should have. Don't worry about it. By the way, Uncle, Auntie, do we have a lot of quilts and cotton clothes at home? What are you asking that for? When I first arrived, I heard someone was buying up cotton at high prices. Something like 300 yuan per half kilo. Zhang's mother and Zhang Fu instantly widened their eyes and looked at me in disbelief. How much? 300 yuan per half kilo. That's impossible. There's a guy shouting it over a loudspeaker. He's probably still at the village entrance now, but we still need those quilts and coats to sleep in. How could we just give them away? Just something I overheard. Before I could finish, Zhang's mom had already run out of the house. Not long after, she happily returned holding a thick wad of 100 yuan bills. She and Zhang Fu came back to the yard. Their joy from that small gain today will become their regret in the apocalypse. Once that goal was achieved, I moved on to the next part of my plan. Xincheng, my boss wants me to return to work early. I'm leaving tonight. Will you come with me? My boss said it's fine. He can get us 2 first-class business seats. Zhang Fu looked furious. What kind of boss makes people work during the new year? How much is he paying? Treating people like this? I nodded. It's not much. Just about 50,000 yuan. But it's enough for me to buy a car. So Uncle and Auntie don't have to worry. Zhang's mother's eyes lit up. Oh my, work is important. Xincheng, what are you waiting for? Help your wife pack her things already. Zhang Xincheng and I took the car to the train station. Carrying our luggage, we boarded the pre-booked train. It was the exact same route as in my past life. But this time, we went straight into the business class section that was once occupied by others. Neither of us had eaten lunch. So we went to the dining car and had a big meal. Zhang Xincheng was sweating like crazy from eating. He was always someone who couldn't stand heat. Seeing him like that, I asked the attendant for a cold coat. While he wasn't looking, I slipped in some sleeping pills. Zhang Xincheng happily drank it, let out a satisfied burp, and soon fell asleep. As the view outside the window was slowly blanketed with a thin layer of snow, I checked the time, then pulled a large bag from my backpack. Quietly, I packed up Zhang Xincheng's sweater, down jacket, hat, and shoes. All of them stuffed into that bag. As the train pulled into the station, I stood up with my suitcase and walked out with his bag of clothes. Once off the business class car, a staff member came over and helped with my luggage. Snow was falling heavily on the platform, and the freezing wind whipped through my hair. I tossed Zhang Xincheng's bag and all his clothes into the station's trash can, then headed to the parking lot. I stuffed my luggage into the freight truck. Not pausing for a second, I started the engine and drove off. There were few cars on the road. After all, no one would come to this county during Chinese New Year. If my timing was correct, in another 6 hours, the entire world would be blanketed in snow. But even now, the snow outside the car window was already falling heavily. The windshield wipers kept working non-stop, but the snow on the blades kept piling up. If not for the blizzard, based on usual timing, it would take me 2 hours to drive. From the train station through the county to the construction site. Just 2 hours. But now, with the snow worsening, my truck couldn't go any faster. The travel time would at least double. Zhang Xincheng would never have guessed that while retrieving my luggage, I had already installed a hidden remote charging camera in the luggage rack, and right before leaving, I handed over a theft report letter to the train attendant. In my previous life, there were members of a criminal gang on that train. To survive, Zhang Xincheng acted slick, obsequious, and tried to win their favor by any means. He even joined them and became one of their accomplices. But this time, he won't get that chance. Once Zhang Xincheng wakes up and finds his luggage missing, he'll definitely report it to the police on board. And because of the letter's contents, they'll bring him to confront those fake workers and killers, face to face. If he and Jay that group, within a day, he'll be the one who gets eliminated. I drove my freight truck along the provincial road for half an hour. I thought the journey would go smoothly. But as I passed through the county, I suddenly noticed a truck appearing behind me about the same size. Due to the snowy, slippery roads, that truck was also driving slowly. It kept a not too far, not too close distance from me. In snowstorms on mountain roads, trucks tend to follow one another. But my natural alertness made me suspicious. When I reached the first fork in the mountain road, that truck was still following right behind me. A chill crept up my spine instantly. I had 2 hours left, and 3 kilometers to go. If he keeps following me, things will get tricky. I didn't hesitate anymore. I decisively slowed down and pulled over. The truck behind me seemed to hesitate as I suddenly stopped. It paused for a moment too, but then quickly sped up and passed me by. At the second fork ahead of me, it turned in the opposite direction. Once I was sure it wasn't coming back, I started the engine again and continued on my original route. I drove the freight truck to the entrance of the cave. Without hesitation, I drove the entire truck straight into the cave. Entered quickly. A wave of warmth instantly surrounded me. As it detected my presence, the automatic sensors nearby immediately turned on all the lights. At the same time, an AI voice echoed through the space. Height and weight recognized. Identity confirmed as owner. Hello, PP. Welcome home. Internal cave temperature has been stabilized at 22 degrees Celsius. Overall humidity, 45%. Power generator charge level, 99.99%. Solar heating panels, operating normally. Outdoor temperature continues to fall. Now stabilized at 15 degrees. Chickens, alive. Cattle and sheep, alive. Feed supply, sufficient. Soil in the main hall is slightly dry. Watering is recommended. At that moment, I finally felt a weight lift off my chest. I glanced at the time. Only 1 hour left until the blizzard apocalypse. Just 1 hour. After a full day of work, I stretched my body, then went to the bedroom to change clothes, and took a hot shower. After bathing, I felt completely refreshed and clear-headed. Only then did I grab a cold beer from the fridge. I sliced up some fruit. Then, holding my phone, I soaked into the relaxing hot spring. I calmly watched the surveillance feed. Where the man was still sound asleep, I took a deep swig of chilled beer. As the hops slid down my throat, my back leaned against the 45-degree hot spring stone wall. The contrast of heat and cold made every pore on my body open up. After the soak, I lay down under a warm blanket. I switched the camera feed to Jiang's parents' home. They had traded all their coal for cotton, just to make money. But in the apocalypse, they lost invaluable resources. In the footage, the two clung to each other, sharing body heat. Their faces were frozen red, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. All the grievances from my past life seemed to be released in that moment. I had spent the entire day on the road. My body was utterly exhausted. I closed my eyes and fell into a deep, satisfying sleep. After waking up, I opened the fridge and took out a box of chicken wings. I was planning to air fry them for dinner. Just then, the AI voice suddenly rang out. Warning, outdoor temperature has dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Hearing the system alert, I opened my computer surveillance, then poured another glass of beer and placed it on the table. A good show deserves a good drink. Sure enough, the train surveillance showed utter chaos. Jiang Xincheng stood there helpless, desperately trying to call me. But he didn't know. My SIM card had already been tossed onto the platform. When I got off the train, hearing the powered-off tone through the phone, Jiang Xincheng frowned. He looked around in confusion, and his eyes landed on 2 train police. Those 2 officers were escorting several criminals from his past life toward the security room. Officer, please help me. All the clothes in my wife's luggage are missing. The train police looked him up and down. You're Jiang Xincheng? How do you know that? Before he could react, the officer grabbed his arm from behind. Saves me the trouble of looking for you. Come with us to the police cabin. Several people had their heads down, but when they heard the name Jiang Xincheng, one tall man in the group suddenly looked up and glared viciously at him. As the police escorted people out of the carriage, I took out the roasted chicken wings and then cooked a pack of spicy turkey noodles. I also fried some marinated eggs. As the steaming noodles came out of the pot, Jiang Xincheng reappeared on the surveillance screen. He was sending me message after message. Pee-pee, where are you right now? All my stuff is with you. You got off, what am I supposed to do? And where are my clothes? In the chaos, suddenly several gunshots rang out. Everyone listen up. Drop everything right now. Get out of this carriage one by one. Whoever dares to grab anything, I'll shoot them dead. I randomly turned on the surveillance mic. It's already the end of the world. That stuff won't even last you a few days. Instantly, the group reacted like startled animals. Bro, look! There's a camera here. If you want to live longer, I suggest you don't destroy that camera. The tall man approached the lens and said, Who are you? Why did you install a camera here? I was afraid my man would cheat on me, so I planted it here to spy on him before leaving. Who knew something like this would happen? Look, I'm not on that train anymore. And I have no conflict of interest with you, but I know you're all stuck on that train now. And so is my man. I want you to help me find him. The tall man instantly understood what was going on. What does that have to do with us? Why should we help you? You're all trapped on that train. If you don't get out soon, you'll all freeze to death. But my man is in there too. You think I'd let him die? Of course I want him alive. If you follow him, you'll all have a better shot at surviving. They seemed to realize I had a point. The group exchanged glances. My man's name is Jiang Xincheng. Bring him to me, and I'll give you my location. Places farther north have already dropped to minus 70 degrees Celsius. You're lucky you're in the mountains. The temperature drop isn't as fast. While you still can get out, do it now, before it's too late. Once the power fails on that train, that place will become your frozen grave. The tall man's face darkened as he processed what I said. Then he turned around and yanked the stunned Jiang Xincheng to his feet, dragging him off the train. I sent a GPS location to Jiang Xincheng's phone. It was just a random spot I'd marked on the map. When they opened it, they saw it was 3 kilometers away from the train. At first, it didn't seem too far. But the snow outside was already waist deep. Now, 3 kilometers felt like a massive trek. I saw the temperature was still dropping. If they didn't leave now, they might not make it. Jiang Xincheng, I don't care about the others, but you'd better make it out alive. If you find me, we've got enough food in this bunker to eat for several years. As I said that, I sent them a picture of shelves packed with supplies. Seeing the message, the tall man slung his arm around Jiang Xincheng's neck. Don't worry, he said. We'll make sure your man gets to you safe and sound. Seeing the shelves stacked behind me, the group clearly couldn't resist the temptation. I turned off the phone and headed toward the vegetable garden. Before the apocalypse hit, I had already planted lots of vegetables. I installed an AI-controlled system to water and fertilize them on schedule. Many of the vegetables had matured. I picked a full basin of them and stored them in the freezer I had prepared in advance. After finishing everything, I saw that Jiang Xincheng had already made 20 missed video calls. I picked up my phone and immediately called him back. It took him a long while to answer. How far are you now? Still not there. We're already at the top of the mountain. Shenyan, can you come pick us up? It's freezing cold out here. And our phones are running out of battery. The tall man suddenly snatched the phone. Your man is still in our hands. You don't care if he lives. If you don't come out now, he really will freeze to death. I sighed. You think that pitiful life of his is worth anything? How much do you think it's worth? What did you say? Jiang Xincheng, do you still remember the amount on that life insurance policy? What insure? Jiang Xincheng froze mid-sentence, as if he finally understood everything. He tried to explain himself, but the tall man kicked him to the ground. He landed face down in the snow. Damn it. You two lovebirds dragging everyone down got me played like a fool too. Strip him. Take off his clothes. There's still a chance if we get back to the truck. As the phone was tossed aside, I could hear Jiang Xincheng screaming in the video, shouting and wailing. But the wails didn't last long. The video feed went dead shortly after. I shut off the phone and turned my gaze back to the surveillance screen. I saw someone still walking down below. Looked like one of the train staff from before. I immediately tapped the call button. Is anyone still alive? The train attendant was startled. He quickly looked around to see who was speaking. Long story short, the guys with guns earlier were tricked by me into getting off the train. Now that they realize something's wrong, they're on their way back. If you want to survive, go lock the train doors immediately. Once they return, you're all dead. This is the control center. We've already dispatched someone to rescue you. After I finished speaking, the man froze for a moment. Then it was like a spark of hope was reignited in him. He immediately gathered a few people in the car and rushed toward the train door. Seeing that the train car was now empty, I finally turned off the camera feed. This was all I could do. I gave them hope, hoping they could cling to that last bit of faith and stay alive. From here on out, only they could save themselves. System report. Outdoor temperature update. Master, the current outdoor temperature is minus 70 degrees Celsius. Safety level, critical. My heart clenched. Then I slowly let out a long breath. The end of the world had truly come. After dealing with Jiang Xincheng and that group of murderers on the train, I returned to my bedroom and slept deeply for a full day and night. These past 3 months had drained me completely. I desperately needed to recover. Yet that day and night of sleep was so insignificant in the long days of Doomsday because I realized, as long as I wish, I could lie in bed and sleep for as long as I wanted every day. During this time, each night, I would read those survival novels I had downloaded earlier. 3 months later, there was no more news from the outside world. My phone might as well have been scrap. Other than reading novels and playing some offline games, it was basically useless. The days in the cave during the apocalypse passed by one after another, just when I truly believed I was the only living person left in the world. One day, suddenly, as I was taking salmon from the freezer, I heard a sound coming from the back of the truck. I was nearly scared to death. It had been 5 months already. The freezer temperature was at minus 20 degrees Celsius. How could anything still be alive inside the truck? Could the mountains really be haunted? Then where were the ghosts all this time? But as I moved closer to the sound, I realized it wasn't coming from the trailer, but from the driver's cabin. Just as I was about to open the door, the static noise came again. I flung the door open in shock, only to discover a walkie-talkie sitting right there in front of me. Hello? Is this the rescue team? Can you hear me? Where are you? I was just about to ask more, when the voice continued. Someone is approaching your cave. Be careful. That one sentence nearly scared the soul out of me. What's scarier than ghosts in this world is probably a walkie-talkie suddenly activating with a survivor's voice. He told me someone was getting close to my cave. Quick, take the walkie-talkie out into the open air. I was stunned. He even knew I had an open-air cave. After hearing that, I didn't hesitate. I moved immediately. I rushed up to the open-air section of the cave and asked repeatedly, just when I thought the walkie-talkie was broken. A cold voice finally came through. I immediately asked, "Who are you? How do you know someone is approaching me?" I saw it. I'm on the mountain next to yours. The next mountain? There's another mountain nearby. Don't worry, it's safe now. There are quite a few hot spring mountains nearby, and quite a few people have hidden in them. The peak of your mountain has been emitting smoke, so people have been risking their lives one after another, trying to reach you. Just a few sentences sent chills running down my spine. So during these past 4 months, while I thought everyone outside was dead, there were people constantly heading my way. And this seemingly small cave entrance has actually been smoking every day during daylight. Yet I couldn't see it myself. You should be glad. There's a cliff right behind the mountain you chose. Everyone trying to reach you was misled by the snow and fell off that cliff. Hearing the man's words, I inhaled sharply. How do you know about me? I've been transporting goods these past few months too. But I didn't expect you'd also enter the mountains on the very last day. I originally planned to follow your truck to the end, to see exactly where you went. But you were too cautious. So I bypassed you and returned to my own mountain. So it turns out he was the one driving the freight truck following me that day. The location he's at is around 5 kilometers from me. It's near the fork in the road I saw that day. Another 3 kilometers further down, he said that the county mayor had prepared several caves as hideouts. This cave of mine was the last one sealed. It hadn't been completely emptied yet. His cave had been finished a year ago, and people had even stayed in it multiple times. But by the time he found it, it had already been sealed off too, and there was nothing left inside except for the basic infrastructure. Even the TVs had been looted. Although his cave doesn't have an open-air section, it's at a high altitude, and from the side, there's a 180-degree floor-to-ceiling window. It gives a direct view of the smoke rising from my mountain and the area behind it. So he was able to use binoculars to see people constantly approaching my direction. This area is a scenic zone. Probably many staff stayed behind instead of returning home. By chance, they survived by staying there. But due to a lack of food and water, they saw smoke coming from the top of my mountain. So they risked their lives to come find me. Unfortunately, although the distance was short, there was a huge rift between the two mountains, covered by white snow, so no one could see it. Everyone thought they could climb up to find me, but before freezing to death, they all fell off the cliff. At this point, we both fell silent. Through our conversation, I learned his name is Jong Han, a graduate student majoring in atmospheric physics. He was the first to notice abnormal weather. As early as 6 months ago, he had already predicted the exact month the cold wave would arrive. But his professor didn't take him seriously, because this cold wave was no secret among meteorologists, and high-level scholars believed a strong warm current would disperse it. As the date approached, Jong-han couldn't get anyone to believe him. Even his professor thought he was desperate to graduate, so he had no choice but to save himself. According to him, during a field study, he saw me near a travel agency. At the time, he wasn't suspicious. But when he ordered supplies from the same logistics company I used, he was told someone else had already ordered a lot for delivery to the same county. He even had to wait an extra week because of it. Only then did he realize someone else was doing the same thing. In the end, he found out I was truly wealthy, while he was truly poor. Jong-han is an orphan, with no family since childhood. He relied on public assistance and scholarships to make it this far. But Jong-han is very smart. He knew he was putting all his eggs in one basket. So within a month, he relied on online loans and credit, and ended up blacklisted for defaulting. I asked him how much he borrowed in the end. He pursed his lips and thought for a while, then told me he borrowed 20 million. I was truly impressed. He was a madman. Did it ever occur to you what you'd do if the cold wave lasted only a few days or months? What would you do then? He never thought about it. Now that Jong-han was around, my monotonous life finally had some fun in it. At least I had a neighbor. It was better than talking to the wall every day, since he didn't know my full supply list, and he didn't have an open-air setup. Jong-han's later procurement differed from mine significantly. For example, he never considered raising chickens or ducks or planting vegetables. But he did copy me by stocking up on vitamins to supplement his essential nutrients. It was a decent effort to support his body. He also bought a lot of frozen meat like I did. But the problem was, he couldn't cook. That was the biggest issue. So up until now, Those grains, oil, and meat were barely touched by him. May I ask bluntly, how did you survive these 5 months? Instant noodles, all right? He wins. Jong-han might sound cold, but he's actually quite warm-hearted. For instance, he calmly told me about someone trying to reach my mountaintop. He also kept sending me updates over several months as a favor and to stay busy. I decided to teach him how to cook. It was my way of helping strengthen his frail body. Even though I couldn't see him, I could imagine what a guy looked like. After living on instant noodles for 5 straight months, he must be skin and bones. The 4th year after the apocalypse, I woke up exhausted in the early morning. 1001. 040 to 46,066. Is it really happening? If not, let me sleep a little longer. Wake up. The snow melted, but I hadn't even opened my eyes yet. And instinctively sat up, then rubbed my eyes and immediately pulled open the curtain. The outside was still pure white, almost blinding me. What melted? It's still all snow out there. No, look closely. The snow level dropped 2 centimeters. I frowned, but I didn't know that far away on the neighboring mountain. Jong-han had been standing at the glass window, observing the snow and wind conditions. In the 5th year of the apocalypse, the snow line dropped by 5 centimeters. I asked the system for the outdoor temperature. The system replied, outside temperature is minus 55 degrees Celsius, which means, in a few more years, the temperature could reach minus 40 degrees. Summer, year 5 of the apocalypse. 2 cows gave birth to a calf. I was happy for 3 days straight. That day, I filled their troughs to the brim with food. To celebrate, I happily told Jong-han the good news, while collecting eggs from the coop, to bake myself a cake. A reward for my years of careful care. For the livestock at home. Jong-han, do you think there are still any living people in the world? Those who've made it this far? Probably not many. If the temperature rises, what's the first thing you want to do? Eat McDonald's. Can you be more ambitious? It's the apocalypse. Where would you find McDonald's? Then I'll go uncover the truth behind the apocalypse. All right, I'll check if the train can still run. Hearing the silence from the other end, I smiled, then opened the rice cultivation video, stored on my computer. Spring, year 8 of the temperature had already risen to minus 18 degrees. I heard static coming from the other end of the radio. I brought it to my mouth. Where are you? At the door. I opened the gate that had been closed for 8 years. As the door creaked open, I looked at Jong-han's delicate face and exclaimed, Jong-han. Yes, it's me. Jong-han, I've seen you before. Jong-han was momentarily stunned. It was at the travel agency in the county town. Amidst the sea of people, he casually looked back. Back then, a tall boy was staring around in confusion, and also glanced back at me by chance. During that time, neither of us hadn't considered teaming up to survive the apocalypse together. But Jong-han's mountain could see the white smoke, observe high-altitude patterns, while my mountain could raise cattle and sheep, and grow vegetables. I pursued life after the apocalypse, while Jong-han pursued the truth behind the apocalypse. We each had our own paths and choices. After a long pause, I was the first to speak. The extreme cold is about to end. See you in another 8 years. Jong-han hesitated slightly, then held my hand and said, see you in 8 years. Hopefully next time I'll have found the answers. We looked at each other and smiled.